Welcome to the Core podcast. I'm Gerald, and I'm here with Kevin and one more guest, Apology Man, Vineeth Mecca, who is known for Guilty Gear, Dragon Ball Fighters, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, multi-fighting game specialist, and actually working on a fighting game. Is that about right? Did I get everything correct there?
Yeah. I played a lot of different fighting games, but yeah, I'm working on Riot's up and coming fighting game, 2XKO, and our team is called the Gameplay Analysis Team, where we essentially just play the game at like a pretty high level, work with designers really closely on like how to balance and like adjust the game, and we find like bugs and that kind of stuff. There's like a lot of QA stuff involved with it as well, but yeah, that's like
yeah. I noticed there was a kind of a QA aspect. I guess we can just jump straight to like the 2XKO stuff first. But yeah, so what is like a day-to-day work like as a QA engineer for a fighting game? Because I imagine, like you said, there's probably a lot of the boring stuff where you kind of have to like fix like some like technical errors. You find these kind of issues, but then there's also like there's like game balance stuff too. I don't know how much you're involved in that kind of thing, but I guess what would be like kind of your role, and what are you doing most of the time behind the desk?
Yeah, so I mean, what we do is like we play test the game pretty frequently. We have like a daily play test that our team is like always a part of. So it's basically my job just to be really good at the game. So like I'm in a lot of ways I'm just interacting with it as like a player, like a regular player, like how I normally would, where I lab the game a lot. There's obviously playtest focuses where we'll be like, all right, we have this focus on Echo today, for example, right? And then we're looking at maybe some changes the character got, and just trying to give like the best like feedback that we can about our play experience, and hopefully that'll like inform two designers like whether or not the changes landed, or just or maybe they were something completely different, or maybe like sometimes we'll just be like outright like, hey, this change was super fun, very broken though, like, or like something like that. We can be pretty blunt at times, but yeah, like that's basically what I do is just play the game at a high level and play test it pretty often.
Yeah, I think people have noticed in the FGC that people who are kind of doing the play testing right now for 2XKO are pretty high level players in general. Obviously, you've made top 8s at Evo, and there's Clockwork, Marvel Legend, and
Marlin Pie.
Yeah, Marlin Pie as well.
In there too, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is very interesting because like now there's people that we know from the community that are high level players that are working on this game as a play tester, and I guess I'm sure other games do this as well. They have I remember in the Street Fighter 5 days there are some players that were known players that were working on the balance and things like that. But I guess this is kind of an interesting question because even at the top level, when you have like really good players, if you look on Twitter, there's like favoritism for characters, and I think somebody mentioned on Twitter recently that downplaying your character is now part of the meta. It's the meta, right? And so campaigning for your character is a thing. But I guess when you're playtesting, you guys are all trying to be kind of as honest as possible with each other for for the sake of the game. But I guess there's how do you actually say like this is broken? You're mentioning something was broken, right? That's kind of goes out of the boundaries of what's acceptable. So how do you guys have like disagreements at times, and you guys have to kind of like have like a discussion, or is it pretty unanimous in general where people are like, oh, okay, yeah, that is kind of broken? And I guess there's some like fine line cases where it's like, okay, this is maybe we can't all agree on this one. I guess what is that process like, or is it somebody who just yells the loudest like, no, I'm right, no. And then that's what happens? I don't know.
Yeah, on our team, like we actually have like a lot of different skill levels. Like I'm primarily there for like a high level view on some of the changes. Like I can try to give perspective on where I might think things might affect low level and mid level players, but we have a lot of players at those levels to give that feedback in those playtests. So yeah, we have like a lot of different perspectives on like changes. And yeah, I think like that's like a really nice thing about our team is like a lot of people that I work with, they're really about fighting games, like you mentioned, right? Like Clockwork and Marlon Pie, like those are game designers on our team as well, and like they're all like different voices that like just give different views on changes that our game gets. But yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm glad you like brought up the balance like discussions and like how players can like essentially like have like an agenda, you know, like they can act like pretty self-serving in ways where they're like, okay, if I am vocal about maybe my character's changes or balance changes, I can advocate for balance patches and stuff. And I know that because I've been that player. Like I've literally been
Yeah.
that player before. So I know exactly that experience.
Yeah, so you mentioned something interesting about like even lower level players. So of course, I'm sure people working on the team are not all like like you guys at the high level, but there are going to be people from different different ranks, and so I'm guessing like it's kind of hard to tell if you're coming from like like a very very long fighting game background and you just pop in a new fighting game and you get master like in a week, and if you're like that versus somebody who's kind of new, I guess how does the process work? I mean, obviously you guys aren't just being like, oh, you're a scrub, your opinion doesn't count, right? You can't. That's not how you work on a game. So I guess like how do you incorporate that kind of feedback of maybe somebody not at a higher level that might have some they might have some good ideas, but then some ideas might be maybe just not understanding fighting games in general very well. So how do you guys kind of parse that? Or I don't know, is that too deep of a question? Or
Well, I mean, yeah. So, like our team, we always talk about how we're not data driven, we're data informed. So, all the feedback that we receive, at the end of the day, we're gonna make like a final decision on it. And it is useful to like hear from like all levels of skill, right? But it's like our job to kind of deduce like what the actual problem is, like sometimes maybe, and it's not the job of like whatever level of players to like give like really perfect pointed feedback. They're players, they're just giving their experience, right? So it is ultimately our job to like make the choice. So yeah, there'll be like mid-level players that might uh make a suggestion or something that's like, oh, this is like way too powerful, like I can't handle this. And then at a high level it could be like, oh, actually there are a lot of like solutions to beating like said option, you just have to know them. But like we have to look at both of those like takes and like make a choice that like makes the most amount of sense. So yeah, like I think all the perspectives are useful, and players are good at the biggest thing I've learned is the players are very good at pointing out problems the most, like more than anything. Solutions questionable, but there's great solutions I've heard from players, but problems are the best thing that players are good at highlighting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And it does make a lot of sense. I guess in general, it is like I think solutions are generally harder than finding the problem, so what's been interesting to me about 2XKO is that this is an American game. This is a game made by an American company, and it has people from the American FGC. But it's a game that's clearly inspired by the Japanese fighting games of the past, like the archetypal games and Marvel games and the Guilty Gears, and it's an interesting game because it's taking those as inspirations, it seems, but then there are also like kind of a different approaches that maybe you can only find in in the Bay Area, right? So I guess what are kind of the things that is really you guys really inspired by kind of the old school archetypal games, and what are some of the new approaches you guys are making for 2XKO?
Yeah, I mean, a big thing I like about 2XKO for me personally, from my fighting game experience, is like I'm a long time Marvel player. Like I played Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 for like several years, and I love that game to death. I know you do too, Kevin. That game is sick. Like
best game in the world. I can proudly say it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
a lot of people on our team also agree. Clockwork, also longtime Marvel 3 player, Marvel 2 player, and Marlon Pi also played Marvel 3 for a long time as well. So like we have a lot of just inspiration from like playing games like that like a lot of our life. So we definitely have tastes like in what games we like, So you will see things that are like inspired from games like that, like Marvel, but then you'll also see like a decent amount of mechanics from like other games as well, right? Like our game has a parry, right, for example,
Yeah.
and that's very much like from the many different fighting games that have parries, right? Like we think parries are like cool, so we're like, yeah, well, we're gonna have it in our game. So we definitely take like a different flavor from like kind of everything that we feel is fun and also like fits the type of game that we're trying to make.
Yeah. So that's going off that point of putting a bunch of these mechanics. One thing I noticed about 2XKO is that there's so many of the things that fighting game players love about these games. Like you mentioned, like adding a parry mechanic to a game like this it's kind of a fresh thing. I mean, to have like a parry mechanic in something like Marvel MVC3, that would that can change the game in like a big way, and it's
Hmm.
bringing all these dimensions together into this game. It's almost like let's take all the cool stuff that we have and put it into this game. I'm wondering, is there any concerns that maybe like putting like so much of these mechanics at once can create like a mental stack that might be difficult for certain players getting into it, or maybe even for high level players? Because mental stack's kind of this conversation that you've heard even for a game like Street Fighter 6, which is a grounded fighting
Yeah.
game without a tag system, and of course, like the meter and the burnout mode and the all the kind of things that Street Fighter 6 has. Yeah, there is like a mental stack that can be it can be daunting. In my opinion, like for me, I enjoy that mental stack. I'm just like, oh, okay, like I should have been thinking more along this line. I should have been checking my gauge more than thinking about the anti-air at that moment, or like that.
Hmm.
There's kind of this thing about like
Gives you that realization there are room to improve.
yeah,
Kinda,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I like personally, I think this is a cool thing, but of course, everyone has kind of a different take on what to do, and I think a lot of this is there's with any new fighting game, there's a lot of stuff to figure out, so it's going to be more overwhelming when you get into it, obviously, than when you're used to it for a while, because it's the problem is when a game is played for like 6 or 7 years, the issue usually becomes that, okay, this game's getting kind of stale, right? Like a lot of people would be like, we need something. I remember the Tekken 7 people wanting, Tekken. When's Tekken 8? When's Tekken 8 has been this? Maybe that's been
Become a
prompted.
meme.
Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
maybe that's been prompted by Akuma being in the game or the 2Ds or whatever.
Yeah, could be.
But but there's definitely like when a game is new, there's stuff we haven't uncovered, so there's kind of this uncertainty. When a game gets older, it becomes kind of figured out more or less. And I guess if you just let that initial opinion cloud the judgment of designing a game, then you could maybe not get exactly what you want. So I guess that's a kind of a long-winded way of asking, like, how do you guys approach this, like mental stacks and things like that?
Yeah, yeah. So like one thing I really like about our game is that we're not afraid to make like a crunchy and like complex fighting game. Like we want an experience that'll like last a while. And to create something like that, you need like a lot of like interesting mechanics. I definitely understand players that like can feel like a little overwhelmed by like how many mechanics that are in the game. But we try to do our best in like making the game accessible in like other ways. But ultimately, like we want the players to feel like they can invest in a game that they can enjoy for a while. And like for me personally, like I like games that are complex. Like I like games that have that complexity, but it's more just like the onboarding and getting people like on board to get on that journey to like keep getting better at the game. So yeah, like we do actually like have a lot of stuff, and nowadays like players are very smart. Like we will.
Oh yeah.
I see people get so good so fast. Like, and even just from like our alpha lab, I was so blown away by like how quickly players got good at it, and like that's not gonna stop anytime soon. Like as the years go on, the level of fighting game play will just keep getting higher and higher, and the more players that get into it. So yeah, like we want like an experience that's gonna last for a while. So we're not afraid to have like the mechanics that we need to get that experience.
Yeah. Some of these players are actually, they learn faster nowadays than they did before. And I think maybe there's, obviously there's more materials out there on YouTube to kind of, study up, and, there's more tutorials in these games. And I think people are just kind of discovering these games more and more in general. And there is that aspect too. So I guess, so this is a big fighting game release, right? There's no other way to put it. This is 2XKO is using League of Legends IP, and it's it's being backed by Riot, and of course people have seen the ecosystem for esports and professional competitive gaming through Riot, and so there's like a lot riding on this. But something that I've been seeing from just online and just talking with people about the game is that there's almost like this kind of like, it's like this cautious optimism of like, like there's maybe some people are getting like too hyped for this thing, and we don't want to, it's like overhyping a movie or something, where you're kind of like worried that it might the expectations might not be well adjusted, and so I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts on that, or have you guys like, is that some like a
is it even a concern?
Is it an
all?
interesting thing for you, or how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I was a player before I was a part of this team, and I've definitely had that experience as well. And it's cool though. Like it's optimism though, like that I mostly see. So that always makes me happy, like just working on it. But like I definitely know the experience, like as a fighting game player, like being like a high level fighting game player for a while. The biggest thing that I always wanted from developers for the fighting games that I played were like, I guess like communication and just like transparency and just like that more like player to dev connection. So when before I got on the team, I was excited about Riot making a fighting game because of their track record with like other titles that they made, with how player facing they are. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I'm to be honest, like I'm not used to that from playing like to be honest, like Guilty Gear and like Dragon Ball and like some of the other games like I've played before, where I feel like I don't know if like my issues as a player are just being heard, I guess. So like one thing I was really optimistic from the get-go was that Riot would be more player facing. But yeah, like I like that players are optimistic, because like Riot's like big company and all that. But I think you should be cautiously optimistic with anything in life. To be honest,
that's a great point. Yeah.
I don't think you should be like, oh, this is gonna be the best thing since sliced bread about like everything. Like you should always like just experience it, like just try things as they come out, like just be honest with how you feel about them, and if you like it, cool, and if you don't, then like say something about it. And like that's the nice thing too, right, is if maybe the play experience isn't something you like we want to hear about it. Like we want to hear like from the players like what you didn't like about it, and just hear that feedback so that we can improve the game to maybe be what it is, or maybe it's not what you want it to be.
I've definitely seen this coming from Sean, obviously Unconquerable. If you go on Twitter, there's when there was the open beta test, you can definitely see that there's an effort to get all the feedback, and getting that data right, as you were saying, it's important to get all the feedback and information, and then doing what you will with that. And so that's definitely a big deal. Obviously, this being a game from Riot, an American company, there's not as much lost in translation, at least with the English speaking communities. So I think there could be a difference there in how communication can work. And it's good to see that they're taking advantage of that. So I guess one of the reasons I wanted you to have you on this podcast is actually your name, Apology Man.
Yeah.
So
for
there's
sure.
kind of when we're in Korea when you came to do to play in a I think it was a
a
Guilty
Fighter
Gear
Spirit
event.
Yeah,
Fighter
it was
Spirit.
Arc Revel.
Yeah,
checkpoints.
and I remember it's like Lord Knight, Jonathan Tene, Slash was there, and you guys were all there. You guys came to our venue when that was still open.
Super Noon as well.
Yeah, Super Noon. And
Yeah, it was good
and
times.
you guys were signing our stuff. Actually, your I don't know if you've checked out any of our streams, but on the background, we're doing the couch setup, and there's like a frame of Faust on there
Oh, nice.
that you had
I remember
signed.
That. Yeah, that hurt.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's not like it was intentionally put on there because we just decorated the place, and that's just where the image was on the couch.
Literally there. Right
Yeah,
now.
and it's funny
Nice.
because there's like a reflection on the streams that reflect the actual like TV that we're watching. So it kind of has this cool effect. But
and it has your signature in it. So people are like, is that really Apology Man's signature?
we got the real one.
Oh, of course. It's authentic.
Yeah, we need a certificate.
Yeah.
I had a gift from some friends that was like an Emmitt Smith signed football. So I don't know if anybody listening is a Dallas Cowboys fan, but he was.
Was it on sale? You're gonna.
But it actually came with like a certificate that like had to prove that it was real.
Oh, that it was real.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, because like like I have signed Daigo stuff, and it could all be fake.
Tokido, Hitbox, and all that stuff.
Yeah. But I promise you, it's all real. I'm not just signing it myself.
Yeah.
Like who would do that? All right. So the interesting thing about your name is there's a story behind it, right? So if you don't mind, just let the audience know like how you came about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So when I was younger, I was so there's a bit of a long story. There's like two parts to it. So I actually had a different game tag before Apology Man. It was Wall Jump Man.
Wow.
Really lame in retrospect. Yeah. So I used to really like Mario Brothers. Like I played Super Mario Sunshine, and Mario's name before it was Mario was Jumpman. And I just wall jumping in Mario Sunshine. So I'm like, I got the best name. I'm going to be Wall Jump Man. Super lame. Anyway, I had that name throughout the years I played BlazBlue, which was like my first traditional competitive fighting game. And I played that for several years. And I had that name up until this tournament that I went to. And at this tournament, I was playing against a player, and I was about to lose the set. It was like a pretty close set. And I was like, oh man, it's over. Like he's got the win. And I played this character named Hawkman. And I had this like really gimmicky setup. So he had this super Hawkman. He had the super that he could charge up to full charge, and it would become unblockable. Is really bad. You have to be like asleep at the wheel to get hit by this. But I was like, wow, I'm gonna lose the set. I got to make something happen. So I go for this really gimmicky setup, and I win, and I like land it, and that's how I win the tournament set. And I'm like, oh my god, I am so sorry that I had to win that way. I feel terrible. I am so sorry. And it turns out when you lose in a tournament set, the last thing you want to hear is the guy apologizing to you. And he was like, are you apologizing for beating me? And then being a stupid kid that I am, I was like, I'm sorry for saying sorry. And then it just like kept getting worse and worse. And I was like, okay, I'm being really dumb right now. And then his friend had to like cool him off and be like, I just don't talk to him. He's being an idiot. Fast forward a few months later, I see him and his friends at a different tournament. And they're kind of like heckling me about it because they were just like, this dude just says sorry about everything. And they're just like, say sorry, Vineet, say sorry about like the dumbest stuff. Like I'm playing casuals. I like drop a combo. They're like, say sorry, Vineet. Why don't you say you're sorry? And I'm like, okay, whatever. I remember I like dropped my wallet on the floor of the venue randomly. And the guy was like, say sorry to the floor, Vineet. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. What do you mean? And then just kept saying it. And then eventually one of my friends said it, Willie, he said, they shouldn't call you Wall Jump Man. They should call you Apology Man. And then it just kind of stuck after that. Like no one would even let me go back to Wall Jump Man, even if I wanted to. And it was just.
Yeah, that's a really, really cool name and a cool origin story. Of course, a lot of players they get named by the community, right? There are people like that like Xiao Hai, Street Fighter KOF player. It's people like him are just he was just a little kid in the arcades, right?
That's what Xiaohai means.
Yeah.
It
And
literally means.
a little known fact, like there was like a very high level Street Fighter player in South Korea that nobody knows about, and he's just somebody who never went to tournaments outside the country or anything, but he was like really good. I think Punko has like really good stories about this player, but he was named fucking Ryu.
Is this the Ryu player?
Yeah. Fucking Ryu was his name. Like it's like,
nice.
But it was the Korean version of it, right? So it was a Korean swear word, or right. So and I'm sure if he went abroad, he'd have to change it to like effing Ryu or whatever.
Sure,
Censor a little bit or something.
Yeah. But like it's but that's something that people were saying about that Ryu player, right? And that's how that name was born. So there's something interesting to be said about like what usually happens, I think, when people start getting like really known in the FGC is before their name is known. The player and their gameplay and their talent is known before their name. Is often like regional, right? So you have like obviously there's PR Balrog, Puerto Rican Balrog, and even Arslan Ash. I remember a long time ago, before Arslan was known and before he won Evo Japan, all that stuff, the Korean players were always referring to this a Pakistani player, right? So it was I think what was he? Who's he playing at the time? It was
another Pakistani player, or
no? It was Arslan was playing.
No, Arslan. Like what character he played? I think it was.
Yeah, what character?
Did you show the tiger
Kazumi.
Kazumi. Was it Kazumi?
Yeah, it's Kazumi. It is the one with with the tiger uppercuts. This is a very
Literal
like
tiger
Street Fighter centric way of saying it, but it's true. It was the Pakistani Kazumi,
right?
And everybody was saying that this Pakistani Kazumi is so good. Like he did a first to 10 with Ulsan and bodied him, and like this guy is like the next thing, but nobody knew him as Arslan at the time. So I think making a name for yourself is kind of, names are very interesting stories. I might just ask anybody like how they got their name just on any podcast for that reason.
Related, like some Japanese players that we know, they name it based on where they are like grown or born from, like Itabashi Zangief. Itabashi is the name of a region in Japan. Tachikawa is a region in Japan. So there's a lot of names like that where they like to represent their place, as well as sometimes they'll add some like a suffix afterwards, whether it's a character, whether it's like a move name or something like that. That's something flashy. That's always interesting.
That's super interesting. Yeah. So the reason why I was kind of interested in your origin story was that I am working on a video about salt, but this is kind of a sequel to a previous video I did, and it's kind of more about like how I think one of the working titles is how to reduce salt, and this kind of goes for anything like obviously it's using fighting games as the proxy, but salt is everywhere in everything.
Every aspect of life.
Every aspect of life, and so kind of one of the things I'm working on is I'm doing research on how people reduce salt in life in general, which is there's a self-help book that I've read has a lot of insightful things. I'm like, oh, this could be really useful for people like in the FGC and just people online and social media in general. Like this can be really valuable stuff, but also for people playing the game, like how people can keep their composure and
especially
and stuff
for
like that.
Competitive players,
and I guess one of the questions that while we were working on the researching this topic, one of the questions we asked Kevin, it was basically about if you could feel salty after winning, right? Or feel bad in some way that it shouldn't have been. And I think this is what led to Apology Man, and that's how I remember that story is it's can you actually feel salty after winning? And I guess the definition of salt is something that you'd have to kind of unpack, but just simply put, it's kind of when things don't go your way in a game. And obviously you didn't want to win like that, right? You kind of, the way you won was kind of like,
the
it's
setup
it
wasn't
was
designed
gimmicky,
to win. It was more like
Right.
it's a gimmick kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's it is an endearing story too. It's kind of like you kind of I thought of like the very like you see in like a lot of old Jackie Chan movies, like he's always saying like, I don't want no trouble, right? And his character is like always, I don't want no trouble, right? And you obviously weren't looking for trouble. You just like won in a way that was really kind of like not in a way that's like you expected, right?
Yeah.
And and in general, I see you, Vineeth, online as kind of a player who's not you're not the type to go out and tweet and just attack like tournament organizers if something didn't go right, or you're not kind of like that
or
kind of
some weird thing on the social media is like, oh man, this is that and that is this, and
I mean it seems like and of course, obviously, I'm sure you get salty. Maybe.
Oh yeah,
maybe
I definitely get salty. I'm not exempt from salt.
We're all
there's
human.
No
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I guess people have different ways of kind of expressing that salt. Maybe they, the way that that I'm seeing is that it's kind of like there's either salt from, that comes from pointing the blame at yourself or the issue towards yourself, which is like the Ryu way, which is like, I'm not good enough yet, I need to improve, which is kind of seen as like the kind of healthier way of improving. But there's also the on the other side, you can be mad at someone else, another person wronged you, right? And you can get angry and upset about it. And then there's the third way, which is like you're just upset at the environment or the way the universe is, the way the world is. Why can't this world just be easier? Why is it, why is the equipment at this tournament, crap? And why is the controller not working? There's kind of that aspect of the salt. And I guess, so I'm wondering how you deal with salt in general and how you see it, and maybe you have some tips or something that I could use.
Yeah, so I mean, I've definitely grown a lot from the years. I've said, oh, sorry, maybe way too much when I was a kid, but I'd say when I get salty, I don't get like insanely like angry or frustrated. I get very like sad, and very much like the third thing, like the environment, where I'm like, oh man, why does this happen to me? Like, woe is me. Like I definitely feel like that's salt, if anything, if I had to pick one more. But yeah, like just to talk about that experience of like feeling salty for someone else, like for in the story with my name. I think as like a player, to get better, like you need to have like a lot of discipline in basically becoming the player that you visualize is strong or you want to be in the future. So I was always like very overly empathetic to players that like, I guess, were feeling wronged, essentially, that like maybe got wronged by the environment or maybe wronged by me, right? Because it wasn't legitimate or what I deemed like legitimate in my head or whatever at the time. So one thing like I had to like kind of learn was to get over that, honestly. Like it's like it's a tournament, like you just gotta win two games. It doesn't matter how lose. It happens like a lot of the time, but you need to secure the dub to like go further in the bracket at that time. And then like I still have this mentality to an extent, because I think it helps you improve, right? Like I think winning in a way that you deem fit or you think is like solid or efficient is good. It's like a good goal to have as a player. And I think I was like too obsessed with it when I was younger. I was very much like, oh man, if I didn't win like this way, then it was wrong. Like I need to be a better player. Like it didn't matter the result, win or lose. Like I needed to play in a way that I deemed was solid or good. And I think a lot of players like run into this trap. It's like it can help you. Like it can definitely help you improve by having this mentality, because you want to become a better player at the end of the day. Winning is a byproduct of becoming like a stronger player overall and like all the mechanics of the game. But yeah, it like this was like the far end of the spectrum where I couldn't even appreciate like a win. Like I felt like so bad that I didn't win in like a legitimate way. So yeah, I think I've grown from that. Yeah. But
yeah. I mean that's a so that's kind of something that you don't really expect from a lot of fighting game players that you see. If you just look on social media, you kind of see the trash talk aspect, and more on that side. We're kind of looking from the audience perspective as like, okay, those players kind of need to like kind of like look into themselves a little bit more, and I guess in Apology Band's case, the thing that you had to work on was kind of like, okay, I have to just think about winning and not really care about this other player's particular experience in game, and that is coming kind of from the other end, right? So there's kind of there is it's a very empathetic thing, and that's a great thing. I mean, this world needs more empathy, I think, in general. But yeah, but then at the same time, there's no way of putting if you're in this fighting game hobby, there's a zero-sum aspect, right? So punching someone in the face is actually good for you. Like that's bad for the other person and good for you. That's what it means to be zero-sum.
Good for me.
Yeah. And so I guess there is an interesting question. There's kind of an open secret in the FGC where it's kind of like, obviously, when you win, you're happy to win. Obviously, like this is why we play these games. We try to get that W. But then at the same time, there are people who talk about like being happy that they made someone else salty, right? Now this is kind of this is an interesting topic, right? And then I call this an open secret because it's not something that anybody can openly be proud of, like I made that person salty. I made that person hit his stick after the match or whatever. But it might be but it might be like a story that you tell like over like drinks or beers afterwards, right? But I guess this is kind of an interesting question because it's kind of hard if somebody were to say like there's nothing that I feel if somebody feels salty. I only feel bad for that person. Like it seems a little bit kind of like missing the whole picture of that emotion, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess what do you make of that? I'm still trying to parse this together. I'm just kind of like, are we all like ruthless like people that are just like out there to like, just like ruin their day, or is there something deeper? Like, is this something? Well, as long as it's about the game, it's okay. But if it's outside the game, obviously that's when it gets personal. You don't want to ever get to that. But there's something about like also the fact that there's an importance to salt in getting people for people to get better in the community, right? So if you don't care about the game, then if no one cared about having lost, then how can anybody really get good? There's if no one cares, they just drop the stick and they do something else. They go into basket weaving or play a traditional sport, whatever. And so this is kind of an interesting question. I'd like to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the context matters a lot. Like, not all salt is equal. There's like sea salt, and then there's like
Himalayan salt.
There's Himalayan salt. Yeah, like it all depends on the person and like kind of like what they value. Like for when it comes to salt, about like there's salt that I'll feel bad for players that maybe feel frustrated about execution errors. I think that's like one that I always feel bad for, even still to this day, right? Because when I'm playing in a tournament match, I want both of us to play our best game, or what we feel is our best game in our minds, right? So when I see someone like maybe misinput like a combo or something, maybe the combo would have won them the whole game. It's still hard for me to feel like it's still hard for me not to feel a little bad for them, like even today. But it really depends on like where the salt is coming from, like within the game. I think that really does like determine like where it comes from. And also on the topic of like like sometimes feeling good for other people getting salty. Like I've definitely had that too. Like I'm not absolved of that. Like for example, like whenever I beat a happy chaos player at Guilty Gear, like I feel like I'm on the top of the world. I'm like, I moved all these boulders up these mountains. Like yeah, like I've definitely felt that as emotion as well. Like it really just depends.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of where it's directed. Yeah, it's the Himalayan salt. Yeah, that's there's definitely different strains of salt, and I guess there's a satisfaction. Yeah, when you beat a happy chaos, and I think anybody who beats a happy chaos, at this point, right? It's can feel that gratification for. Finally, I made you frustrated for once instead of you making me frustrated with your hit scan mechanic or whatever, right? So there's definitely that kind of satisfaction. I think there's something about that as well that, on a deeper level, I feel that if you're seeing other people, get salty about that kind of stuff, it's like, oh man, like I thought my tactic worked, or I thought my setups, it would be easy to beat this person, but they beat me. There is a satisfaction in knowing that it's kind of the level has increased, right? But then the other person's salt, I feel, can be seen as an indicator that, all right, well, that person might come back with some other tech, and we can all get better, right? So it's a complicated thing, and that's why I think it's a fun topic to talk about, because it's not all it's not all one thing, like you said, different strains of salts. So we kind of had this I guess to go a little bit further on this topic that we've been talking about how you can direct the salt is directed at different things for different people. And I guess there's one question I'm trying to grapple is it okay to just be like Ryu all the time, where it's you face a defeat and you're just like, oh, I must do better. I still have a long way to go, and then you win, and then you say the same thing. But I'm still not there yet. I must have a long way to go.
He's been doing that for over 30 years now.
Yeah, if you look at Street Fighter 4's like opening quote for Ryu, he says, I think in Japanese, he says, "Ore no kachi ga tayo danai," right? Which basically means, I think it means like my value is not enough, right? I think kachi is like
to improve.
Yeah, he's always looking to improve. And obviously, it's a very fictional character, and like I've we've had some conversations with the I think the Tong crew about this, how it's like, Ryu is. This is clearly like not a normal person, because you can't be like that like all the time. Like it's like impossible.
About Ryu.
Yeah, there's definitely like it's like I kind of want to go up to him and like, hey, like it's okay, man. Like
it's okay to be this way.
Yeah, we can all like high five each other after a win.
And celebrate your win for once.
Yeah, and like if it's like you don't have to like walk away from the ceremony like every single tournament. You can stand there, but it's interesting something Daigo says in his book, which is Daigo's kind of a player where like people actually have like have called Daigo Ryu in like commentary when he was like he was maining Ryu at the time, but then
he literally
like
played Ryu,
I they kind of see like Daigo's almost like a human embodiment of the best side of Ryu, and I think even in his book, he mentions like, I celebrate whenever I get a big victory or a big W, but I just make sure that it's short. But he still celebrates, right? He doesn't want to get complacent, right? He's like allergic to complacency. But I guess, from your perspective, I mean, how do you see this idea of like, we know that if you're like a salty person that just blames everything else for, not winning, then you're probably not going to improve if you really believe that. If you really believe that there's nothing you can do to improve and it's really just everything else's fault. But on the complete opposite end of someone like Ryu, is there some like folly to that? Is there something about that where like maybe you would have a talk with Ryu about?
Ryu maybe might be the extreme, but I do think his mindset, right, of like improvement is good, right? Like I think improvement is a good mindset to have. You want to get better at the game, but I think at the same time you need to feel your emotions. Like it is not wrong you shouldn't feel bad for being salty. I think that's or you shouldn't feel bad for being very happy for like a victory, right? I think like if I was Ryu, I would be like, I fight Guile and I'd be like, man, Sonic moves are kind of broken. They're really fast. That's bullshit. And then I'd be like salty about it. And then I'd be back on my like, I must become stronger in the heart of battle, like the next moment after. But I still want to like feel a little salty that Guile's Sonic moves are just faster than my Hadouken.
Better in almost every way.
Yeah. It's like it's not wrong to feel that way. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
But I think where players kind of run into the trap of just only feeling the salt and it like overpowering any avenues to improve afterwards is where it gets bad, right? You can see a win from a character where it like maybe it's like a bad matchup, for example, and you could be like, oh man, there's nothing I could have done anyway. Like it was out of my control. Like it was a 7-3 matchup. He has way better options than I could. What's the point, right? And that's, I think, a very bad mentality, right? Your salt is essentially like dictating you not improving. Like you just stay the same because you feel like you did everything in your power. But that's never the case. Like you could always have done something like better, or maybe sometimes like the result of the match will, it just is like that. Sometimes you were just wrong a few times and the other player played well that day. And that's fine too. I think that's also a fine like assessment. But you shouldn't just be like, you shouldn't just give up just from feeling too much salt. I think that's a bad mentality to have. You should eventually get to the Ryu mindset and get back on the streets.
I think the Ryu mindset does exist even with people who are just utterly known as somebody who's completely salty and just kind of nothing that happens is the person's lacking in skill. It's always about the other person's lack of skill or the environment or whatever. Even people who are completely invested in projecting that way, I think they do have the Ryu mindset inside on some level, because you have to.
On some level.
You can't, just as much as it's impossible to be a Ryu, I think it's impossible to not have any of that aspect. And I think the way some people talk, like after the match, they might just like shit talk the other player on Twitter and be salty about it. But you know that you don't know if how much of the Ryu mindset takes over afterwards for that person. So I think it's also not quite accurate to think that just because people display very kind of like outwardly salty behavior, that they're not actually having any kind of Ryu mindset. Yeah, I think that's a
like that should be a consideration. Easy to get the wrong idea of someone just from like how they carry themselves publicly, right? It's like, oh, this like punk guy, he's only salty all the time. Like I don't, he doesn't acknowledge like his losses and improve. No, he clearly does. Like maybe he'll get salty in the moment after like a match and he'll just say what's on his mind, because that's just the type of person he is. But he for sure will, maybe off camera or something, like go back and think about his loss and see what he could have done better. And he'll improve. He just might not be Ryu about it. Like in public. No, I mean, and that's kind of there's colorful personalities in the FGC for that, and this is why it's the game itself, how it can make people respond and behave in different ways is kind of it's almost like it gives you a reflection, right, of like how you are, and it's you kind of, everyone gets exposed when they play fighting games, right? On some level, everyone gets exposed on some level, and I guess I kind of want to move on to, some of the other games that you're known for. We can talk, as much or as little about each one, but obviously, you've been playing Guilty Gear Strive and Dragon Ball Fighters, but MVC3, seems to be, a game that you've maybe the game that you've gotten known for. Correct me if I'm wrong, But all these titles, I guess this is a question of fighting game plurality, right? There's so many fighting games, and and do some of these games, the newer games, playing kind of replace the older games on some level? I love the game, Punch Planet. That's like one of my favorite. Yeah, I love Punch Planet. But oh, really?
I'm a dog player too. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay, dog player. This stupid
Great minds,
stupid hurt box. Yeah. But it's not the game that like, I mean, I'll play if someone's like has a setup, I'll jump on, I'll play my Roy or whatever. But there's a lot of aspects to a fighting game, and the popularity of it kind of, more or less kind of can move how you decide to spend the amounts of time you have on the game.
So for you, Vineeth, as like a player and a like person, like, do you nowadays try to follow the trend as in the popular games in terms of competitiveness, or do you still want to kind of genuinely grind the game that you're best at? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm like trying to answer this question every day nowadays, because honestly, like since like I primarily have been playing Guilty Gear the past like 3+ years now, and that's been like my main focus for fighting games. But in the past, like I've always been the type of person that will play a fighting game that I enjoy. Like I don't think at any point I've ever just like straight up played a fighting game that I don't like at all. I have to at least somewhat like it. Like the amount I can also put up with has also increased a bit too, right? Like Marvel 3, that's the love of my life. I love that game. That game is so sick, but not every fighting game is going to be Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and I have accepted that, and that's fine. And it'll still be there. I can always go back and play it when I want to. But I think part of it is also where the competition lies a bit too. The game that I played the most competitively after Marvel 3, like I played that like up until like 2017, which was like its last year at EVO. And that was like my main fighting game for that period of time. But before that, I played BlazBlue. But after Marvel 3, I played Dragon Ball FighterZ, and I liked the game a lot. I really enjoyed it. I'm like a very character driven person, so if there's a character or strategy that like I really connect with, I will go all in on it. And I think that kind of shows in like my play generally. Like I played like. I don't even play like weird obscure character picks on purpose. Like I just really like those characters, and it just happens to be sometimes might be kind of like some weird unique picks. So in Dragon Ball, I really like Piccolo, and I was like, I'm gonna play Piccolo. This dude's sick.
Yeah, this is interesting because actually when I was coming up with the questions, I was thinking about that one time. I think you posted some Piccolo Tech on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the company they were like, "Oh, thanks for finding out that thing, bro. We're gonna patch it up." And like it was like that was like the end of that piece of tech.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was something like that. I don't know if you probably know the story better about that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, literally there was a few different things, to be honest. Like I'm actually starting to forget like what stuff that I posted would like get removed by devs like afterwards, because I would always be excited to, because I like sharing new ideas that I find, right? Like Twitter is like the great place where everyone just posts all their tech and everyone goes like, whoa, that's cool. Whoa, I want to apply that. So I think the thing you're talking about was like Piccolo's assist. It like broke cross-up protection, and that game had like heavy cross-up protection with projectiles.
I remember this.
Yeah.
So I had like some setups that like used it to be cross-up protection, and I think I posted about it, and they just like like removed it, and I'm like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. But that was like a canon event for me, honestly. Like
no, but that's I mean, this is probably one of the reasons why you're working with the 2XKO team, because like you need somebody that can in a sense kind of break the game in order to find where the the boundaries are. Every game, whether people like to admit it or not, every game there's a guardrail system, because you want it to be a certain way. And yes, in some of the older titles that where a lot of unintended stuff happened, there were less guardrails, but and there's a lot of enjoyment that comes from that, obviously, with some of the legendary retro games and things like that. But yeah, if your approach to the game, like with the modern games now, is kind of there's a certain expectation of that. But what I kind of saw from that moment was it was kind of like a old school fighting game, kind of thing, mixing with the kind of the modern generation of fighting games, right? Because like usually it was like you found out about this tech, and then that was like there was like save it for the nationals, right?
Yeah, you would hide it.
You would hide that, and then like and nowadays where everyone's kind of sharing tech online, it's very open, visible. But then now like the companies see it too, right? And then they're like and they're like, oh, thank you for being our, quality assurance person for free on Twitter.
For sure, right? Like if I posted like a 300% unblockable with Firebrand and Marvel 3, and Capcom was like, oh, wow, great find. Yeah, we're going to remove that. Like it would definitely change the way I like find stuff or maybe even interact online. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's also something to be said about like games. I mean, in the arcade days, there were patches for the games. I mean, they were kind of like revisions, I guess, more than patches. But pretty much you got what you got, right? Whatever happened in the game was pretty much it. And so I guess this kind of new generation of, kind of the modern fighter, you're looking at things. And I guess as a quality assurance person, I'm sure there have been moments where there's something that was unexpected and it's like, oh, we didn't know that you could do this with this kind of move or this new tech.
Yeah.
But then you make the decision, or the team makes the decision, like, are we gonna let this rock, or are we gonna let this or this completely this is untenable?
I'm actually curious because as just players, as consumers of the game, especially fighting games, we kind of expect certain things in terms of balancing or patching or hotfixing relatively frequently now than before. And kind of nowadays it's more kind of structured where games have like seasons or like phases or whatever. Could be like once every 3 months or once every season, something like that. There's been some extremes where in the past, I remember MKX, they literally patched every weekend. And that was some very extreme patching frequencies.
Ooh. Yeah.
But I wonder, like, that's for us as gamers, that's fine as long as the developers make announcements. But I wonder, as being part of a game dev and internally, do games patch like multiple times every day, or like what's your experience in that? Can you talk about?
No, I mean, to be quite frank, the game changes very frequently, very often, and like it just to varying degrees depending on each change. But yeah, I've gotten like pretty used to it now. Like before, I remember like waiting a year for a patch and be like, oh my God, this button is like 2 pixels further. This is blowing my mind. Like now I'm like, okay, this happens all the time. I don't care anymore. Like I'm less like, I guess I'm less sensitive to it than I used to be before, because I would just get so into like maybe like a specific version of a character or hitbox or something.
I mean, someone like you who's very much kind of like you like to focus on characters and specific characters and kind of find out everything there is to know about this character. I can imagine like when this first started happening, it was kind of a frustrating feeling where you keep on labbing this stuff out and you figure out this new stuff, and it took a long time for you to figure this thing out, and now it completely doesn't work, or maybe it works better. Maybe the thing that you labbed out is actually better. So I guess this is something that you see patch frequency and I guess the patch philosophy of each company is very important, and I'm imagining that also is related to the way the company speaks to the player base, right? And like you said, for 2XKO, I'm sure they're going to be, a lot of communication about like revisions. And I remember when the Street Fighter 4 was a thing, when I think it was Combo Fiend was making, it was actually writing up, or I don't know if he was writing things up, but he was in this video series about like the patch changes. And I remember like seeing these. You saw the before and after, and like them explaining these patch changes. When Ultra dropped, and I was actually kind of blown away. I was like, "Oh, this is actually kind of nice."
Very informative,
to show what's going on rather than being like this huge swath of stealth changes, right? So, okay, I guess is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or anything that you thought could maybe add to this topic, or?
Like, I guess just being a player versus like working on the team, like just how like before, I would maybe post something and maybe that thing would get patched out and that would affect me as like a competitor, right? And it was very easy to like have that experience, right, with posting maybe some Piccolo Tech or something and it getting removed, to view that and be like, oh, I should be self-serving in this situation and not post stuff. and make sure that I can like hide it to like potentially win later, right? And players do that all the time, right? Like I was definitely like a victim of it, because it's like why wouldn't you, right? I'm thinking about like how to win, like I'm a competitor, right? So it's very different, like because your goal, like because I'm not allowed to compete in our game, like your goal is to like, or my goal and our whole team's goal is to make the best game possible, right? So if I find something like that, it's like the mindset's totally different. I'm like, oh, I need to put this in front of designers, like they need to know about this so they can make a decision about it, as opposed to before where I'm like, oh no, my setup, oh no, like you can't know.
No, that's actually that's you mentioned that you don't get to play compete in the game for obvious reasons, right? People who are working on it. I guess that's kind of a trade-off, right? I'm sure there's it's almost like a dream job for a lot of people in the FGC who have been playing these games forever to be able to like be a play tester and have a say in how these games get developed in the future. Does the fact that you can't compete in the game, is that kind of, how have you grappled with that? I'm sure, like as a competitor at your core, to not be able to play like at like an Evo tournament for a game that you're so familiar with. I mean, it is what it is, but how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it kind of just is what it is. Like I've definitely grappled with it for a while, and I think what I've realized as the years have gone on is that as long as I have like some kind of competitive outlet, that I'll be okay. Maybe if it's not our game, it'll be just some other fighting game that I can compete in, and I think that's just like enough for me. But yeah, no, it definitely bums me out. I love our game and I love playing our game. But yeah, just not being able to compete in it is like, it feels bad, but like I'll have other games. Like there's so many fighting games out nowadays, and there's and I'm sure, and that's not going to stop.
I'm sure you can play people like just outside a tournament, obviously, like if there's like not anything.
I played some people like even during the alpha, like had some really like fun matches with some of the players.
Okay, so I guess
I do have one last question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sure.
All right.
Yeah. What's up?
Yeah. So it's like just you as a player and liking certain characteristics of the characters in fighting games. And you mentioned you play Hakumen in BlazBlue, and you played Firebrand in Marvel, and coincidentally they all have built-in unblockable moves.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yes. So built-in unblockable moves. Do you think at least one or two characters having that in the game is like a good mix, or do you think that's way too much?
It really depends on, I think, the power level of the game. I don't think unblockable means bad all the time.
Of course.
But it really, I think it just really depends. So for example, right, I think how palatable and unblockable is nowadays. Dragon Ball Fighters, there was this change that Android 21 got. She got this new super where it's like this gigantic like pink explosion that covers the whole screen. Yeah. That's unblockable. But it is very impractical to set up, and it's not good, right? It's basically on the level of that Hawkman unblockable. So it's not, like it doesn't mean unblockable doesn't always mean bad. Like it can be like a funny, goofy gimmick, or maybe it's like a very specific way to set it up. Maybe the Firebrand case might be a little too cheap, which I understand. But
I mean, that's what Marvel is, so we accept that.
Yeah. The thing is like my team is like not the best team in the game in Marvel. Like, like Zero and Zero Morgan, like I'm literally unblockable them, but like that's how I compete with them, with how powerful those characters are. So it just depends on the power level of the game.
And secondly, in Guilty Gear, you play Faust, and Faust also has a very unique ability. It's the RNG of abilities. I guess in Marvel, Xianko kind of had that, but Xianko wasn't really a popular character, so you see it as much. And RNG mechanics in fighting games, how do you feel about that?
Oh man, RNG is such an interesting thing for me. Like at the beginning, I thought I could only really enjoy team games, or like I was like unsure if 1v1 fighting games would like scratch all the creative itches that I needed. But Faust was kind of like an exception to this rule, because he just created so many variables in the match, and that's ultimately what I wanted. Like I wanted to like have each game feel widely different from the last, and that's what I like a lot about like team games and Marvel. Like there's just so
they're kind
many
of like
variables.
Yeah, like the mini Faust is almost like it's kind of like an assist
It's
in a
kind of
way,
just this, yeah.
and you can. This is what's this is what's great about having like character variety, right? You can attract a certain type of player to play your kind of game, even if you hate Shotos or Kai Kisk or whatever. Like it's something. It gives something that allows players to kind of express themselves, and I guess Faust is. It is interesting because I didn't see Faust as a character that could appeal to somebody who's used to like tag-based games with assists and multiple things going on the screen. But he kind of does that in a lot of ways. I mean, like things like the meteor and the all these items kind of act as a multi-character thing. But there's an RNG component to it as well. But I guess what attracted you might have been just the fact that you can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he just has a lot of room for like player expression, and there's generally I've always played very stable characters like that have like very consistent game plans. And Faust is like the opposite of that. Like his game plan is literally random. But I just found it like so fun to basically make the best of like a weird situation. Like that skill set as a player is like very specific. Like I think it's very unique, and Faust like amplifies it to like tenfold, where if you can like think on your toes and you make the other player like play with you too. That's what I like about Strive Faust is like his items are both interactable in both ways. Like a lot of his items, like bomb and like trumpet, for example, you really get these like very interesting interactions because of it, and it's just fun. Like it's very addicting to play, and it makes me want to play like Guilty Gear more. And like any suggestion I give to someone when they like want to pick up a fighting game is like pick a character that's gonna want to make you keep playing the game, and that was Faust for me.
That's awesome. Yeah,
and
that's,
also one last thing was like also in tournament, there was one thing I found pretty interesting with them. In the past, like I've choked a lot of tournament sets. Like I've definitely gotten really close to like some huge victory, and then I like maybe don't clutch it out at the end. I thought it would be an interesting experience to maybe add some randomness to maybe like fix this issue of mine. Like I haven't really told this many people this, but I was like, maybe if I get to that same situation where I would have choked, I could just throw meteors and then I'll win.
That's something that I've heard from other players as well. Not the solution of what you're talking about, but more that you get in a situation where like I have a friend who says his weakness is those situations where they're doing well and for some reason they'll choke or things will fall apart, and they'll start to like clam up a little bit, like they'll be predictably defensive in a defensive pose where people can get in on them and do stuff. But yeah, just having a character like Faust is because it's the situation is changing all the time. I guess, yeah, even in those moments, it's never going to be, you can't have it the same each time. So that's really interesting. Cool. Yeah, that's
in the same way, it could screw you over. Yeah. You throw a trumpet in that situation, and then you get sad. Yeah. RNG giveth, RNG taketh away.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah, this was thanks for being on this podcast. It was I know you were
it was super fun.
A bit sick before, and I know you have a lot of stuff to do in the coming days.
Socials can people meet you?
Yes.
And are you going to be still active in YouTube? How's that going?
Posting a little less nowadays, just been kind of busier, and I've been also just playing a little bit less Guilty Gear nowadays in general, but I've been playing a little bit of season 4. Like I'll still go to my local tournament, but yeah, we'll see what my frequency is for Guilty Gear in the next few days. But I also play try to play other random fighting games. I've actually been playing Rivals 2 a bunch recently. It's been pretty fun.
Oh yeah. We need to get in on that.
Yeah. To try it out.
Yeah.
Are you Apology Man on every socials?
Yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at Apology Man. It's Apology Man for everything. Twitch.tv at Apology Man. I haven't been making a lot of content lately. We'll see. I could get back on that soon. But I've just been busy. But yeah, it's Apology Man everywhere.
Okay, cool. So awesome. Thanks for being on this podcast, and I guess I'll hopefully see you in the next tournament if I go abroad.
Any tournament or event visits you're planning that's upcoming?
Not sure what my next one is. Probably something. I'll be at anything in NorCal. Like I'll be at Genesis. We have a
Genesis
Slashback
is coming up.
That's like a anime fighting game tournament that we have in downtown San Jose. So come to Slashback if you want to play some anime fighting games. I'll be at that. So
okay, dope.
Awesome. All right. So if you guys see Apology Man in the same venue, make sure to hit him up. Give you some advice on RNG characters, maybe.
Yeah. Let me guys know if you're ever in the Bay. Let me know.
Cool. All right. I guess until next time, see you later.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Bye.